just happen. You know, like if when you were out there in 1990 and you took a picture and all of a sudden you saw a formation of UFOs. My experience back with my first wife around the early 70s, going through New Mexico, the bright light, lighting up inside my car and all around the car. I mean, I didn't know what it was. I thought it was, like I was telling you before we went on there, I thought I was getting busted for speeding. And I thought it was a helicopter. But you know what? I've never heard a helicopter. And in all my military career, I never heard a helicopter. It didn't make noise. And it was absolutely quiet, dead night, quiet in the desert with a huge light. It was actually brighter than daylight. And then instantly it was gone. And, and no helicopter I know of could have done any of that, let alone light up.
You didn't get burned on your face like Richard Dreyfuss in Encounters of the Third Kind, did you?
No, but again, talking to Peter Davenport, he had the same experience. And I've talked to people. And a lot of people doing this show, I get a lot of people want to be guests. I got a guest coming up here in the next couple of weeks who is a sergeant in an Oregon large police department. That him and his wife and kid were vacationing back a few months ago near Tillamook, Oregon. And they saw what he claims was aliens. With weird outfits, everything with looking like carrying weapons, and it freaked him out. Now, I checked the guy out. He is who he claims. He's been with the police department for 19 years. He's been a sergeant for the last 8 years. So, I mean, I think the guy is credible. But then right after I saw that, I was talking to Michael Hall, which does my Saturday show, who runs a UFO I-team. He had Peter Davenport on, and all of a sudden, Peter Davenport started getting reports all across the country of people seeing aliens. And again, he had a report from somebody, again, maybe about 20 some miles away from Tillamook, Newburgh, Oregon, or something like that, that it described the same thing that this sergeant described to me. And here he was, talking on our show, or Michael's show, and I was listening to it, and it matched identical to what the sergeant told me, what he saw 20 some miles away from what this other person's seen. And about the same type of month and about the same type of day. So I got a funny feeling we are being visited. I mean, it's too many reports of too many different things going on.
Hey, Gary, did you see the film footage of that city in the skies that was filmed in China a while back? That, over 50% of Chinese citizens believe in UFOs. And suddenly I'm seeing this city in the skies that is not the result of that Morga Fagana, an optical illusion. It looked like a real city in the skies.
I saw it, but I kind of blew it off. But that.
Yeah, I noted it too because I wasn't there. But numerous eyewitnesses took different videos of it, and it's sort of an incarnation. And let's look at what happened to that Japan Airlines pilot, that courageous pilot who was a freighter pilot, and he had an extraordinary UFO experience where a gigantic mothership was tagging along with him and was captured on radar. And his drawings show that this ship was bigger than 3 football fields, which I believe actually happened. Well, it cost him his career.
No.
But once again, people have events that they need to share with the public at all costs.
Yeah, it did for a while cause his career. But again, I have firsthand knowledge of that from a friend, a legal friend. I don't want to go into it, but it represented him. And I believe that citing 100%. But that's the thing. Again, I'm going to go back years ago. I used to have a friend who was vice president. I don't know if you remember Republic Airlines. They were a major airline back in the 80s, going back all the way to the 40s and 30s. Republic Airlines. He was the vice president that airline. And I knew him because we shared the same interests. I was introduced to him from a friend. We became really good friends. He used to be a colonel in the Air Force in Vietnam, and go over from Guam and then drop their load in Vietnam and then, return and stuff like that. One time him and his whole crew, they saw a UFO. He made a mistake and he reported it.
Uh-oh.
And when he landed, the next thing that happened is him and his whole crew were separated. This is the story he told me. And they were basically told if they had to sign a paper, they were told if they divulged it at all, that would be the end of their career, that things would happen maybe even to family members. And, he signed it. Then, after that, he got out of the military. But then, it really bothered him because he said he knew other pilots, that also at different times saw UFOs. But he said even the pilots that were flying for Republic Airlines occasionally would see UFOs. You know what he informed him? If you see a UFO, if you want to keep your job, don't report it. It didn't happen. It didn't happen.
Right.
So, I mean, go ahead.
You were talking about UFO patterns, Gary, and what's interesting was after I had taken my UFO photograph and I became convinced that these were not ordinary objects, I did call MUFON, I called the San Diego UFO Society, who told me that I needed to have the objects blown up to grain, which I could not do in my own Omega C760 enlarging. So I took them downtown to a place called Giant Photo, and I told them what I needed done. And in the meantime, I started recording anything on UFOs on my VHS videotape. And about a month or so later, I got my prints back from Giant Photo, and what they had done was they enlarged it, they took a picture of it, and they enlarged it again. And they separated the formation from the single craft. Now, when I got the prints back, I looked at the formation for at least a week, and I was just in awe because I realized that these are actual spacecraft from another world, and I'm like the first human to see this. And then I started looking at the single craft, which is sort of a blob, and I suddenly realized that the left contour is in perfect focus, and it is acorn-shaped, and I suddenly realized, oh my gosh, I had just seen that pattern in an Unsolved Mysteries episode about the 1965 Kecksburg acorn-shaped craft that purposely altered course and crashed in a forest so that civilians would find it first. And it was funny because this aired for the first time 2 months after I'd taken my UFO photo. If it had aired before it, I would not have seen the Kecksburg UFO and successfully compared it with my own single craft UFO. So in other words, I believe I've photographed 10 Kecksburg UFOs. Now this was funny. Before I had taken my UFO photograph, I was dating a gal who had visited a girlfriend in Dahisa, that's in eastern part of San Diego, and she reported that they had a scary event where this blue light that had been hovering over a distant tree on the property, at one point, Linda woke up to her girlfriend screaming, and she ran into the room to find that that object was right at the window, and the entire room was lit with this brilliant blue light. And they ran from the house, and that was the last I heard of them. But the Kecksburg UFO event, the object the residents claimed was emanating a strong, brilliant blue light. Well, this is what happened in 2002. I'm giving a presentation at the San Diego UFO conference, and afterwards this couple, a man and a woman, came up to me and in a very deadpan, serious look told me that there was a valley near that Dahisa area where they had spied a blue, brilliant light where there shouldn't have been one, and I could tell they were terrified. And I didn't tell them anything about the blue light connected to the Kecksburg UFO. So I thought that was quite an amazing thing. And one more thing. After I made the front page of the San Diego Union Tribune, July 4th, 2011, they got a lot of phone calls, and they forwarded the best of them to me. And one of them was a scientist who lived in Cuyamaca, next to Cuyamaca Lake. And he told me that him and a friend one day were walking the steps to the Cuyamaca restaurant when they happened to notice that there was 3 lights hovering over a corner of the lake. And suddenly they realized that these 3 corners were connected, and it was a gigantic triangular UFO. And suddenly they were beamed aboard, and they went through the tests that everybody's getting, and then they were kicked off, and his buddy, to this day, is paralyzed with fear from that event. I told him he should go get a regression, because it's an important event. And it's in San Diego. And I think San Diego, actually, has been chosen. And once again, anybody listening to this who is interested, find your way to Dudley's Bakery in Santa Isabel, which is just due east of Ramona. Make your way up to Inaja, that's Inaja, Inaja Scenic Trail, and find yourself a way to get to Scenic Spot 7. And you should hug that alien boulder and think to yourself that you want to be part of the next phase of human evolution, and that your cup is not full, that you're ready to learn, that you want to be part of it, and that you will practice peace and understand our place in it. We need to be humble about this. I mean, there's a lot of people, Gary, who think that we can't admit that aliens helped build the pyramids by moving mass with sound, which is what metaphysics said, and they can't believe that we're not the ones responsible for all these megalithic constructions using 200-ton boulders that are fit so perfectly together that mortar's not used. We can't do that, Gary. We can't make the crop circles that are so intricate and mathematically perfect. That's aliens telling us, hey, we're here. We want disclosure. We want to be part of a new phase of human evolution. Who wants to join us?
Well, so, don't forget the Sphinx. I mean, that even predates the pyramids, and that puts it, basically before humans were walking the earth. Yeah. So my feeling is that we were brought here and cultivated to what we are now. And maybe they're watching after us, trying to, help us. Again, I don't know. Again, I have a lot of mixed feelings because all the missing people that have gone missing in the national forest, all the people have gone, from the city. They go out for a road trip, or kids walking down the road. And there's a certain amount is being, taken out by predators, okay, human and animal. But there's way too many people have totally disappeared. And then you get into like the cattle problems where they find what's left of the cattle. And like I was telling you earlier, in Brazil and a few other South American countries, they found human bodies that look like there's nothing we could even do. Okay, especially out in the jungles and out in Brazil, is not bugs eating their. It's done from the pictures. It looks like it's done by sophisticated laser, only even more sophisticated than what we have. So I really feel that, again, now people can disagree with me or not. I think there is the fuzzy warm aliens. They're looking after us. And then I think they could be, as Mary Joyce from North Cashiers in North Carolina, she runs a UFO reporting center there too. She swears that there's another species that Eisenhower, like you mentioned earlier, made agreement with for technology, but they don't like humans. They what she claims, they prefer the opposite. They would like to eat us. And supposedly they were allowed to abduct a certain amount of humans, which they far exceeded what the agreement was. But the government is basically scared to do anything about it because, let's face it, we couldn't stop them if we tried.
Well, they are so technically advanced on us, and it's true. I've heard that these lizard-type aliens are definitely less cordial to the human race. So I would definitely, if I were to be abducted, would prefer the emissaries who have shown up in all these ancient artifacts that have helped mankind, helped